of the law. Now, also on the issue of hindsight or foresight or wherever site we're on right now, I heard several people talk about the fact that it was the Chinese that actually sandbagged Solyndra. They dumped a bunch of stuff on the market. Do you recall that as being part of the discussion?
Well, I mean, factually, it is a part of the discussion.
No, factually, 4 days prior to the closing of the loan, there's an email from the Energy Branch Chief at Office of Management of the Budget. This is tab 7 in your evidence binder. There's an email from the Energy Branch Chief at Office of Management of the Budget to his immediate superior that describes the problems. He wants them to slow down. He says, you're going too fast. You're not following the rules. And then referencing at the bottom of the email, Chinese solar firm revises price. As prices slump, solar industry suffers. More sun for less. Solar panels drop in price because of Chinese imports. This was known. This was not a surprise. This was not new information. Your own Office of Management of the Budget was saying, we need to slow this thing down and follow the rules. But instead, it was speeded up for reasons that this committee, to the best of my knowledge, still has not been able to discern. And that's really where this whole investigation has hinged. The administration would have done itself a favor to get out in front and be honest with the committee. If this is a mistake, and we accept the fact that people make mistakes, and then we can improve our policy from recognizing those mistakes. A big mistake was made here, and then you papered over it, you glossed over it, and went ahead. Do you have any comment about that?
I don't. I haven't looked at that.
Well, you have the evidence binder in front of you?
I do not, sir.
Where is? All right, we'll get it for you. I'd like for you to look at that while you're still here, if I could. Dr. Hogan, I just have one question on the energy efficiency. You spoke a lot in your testimony about electric cars. And in fact, it was kind of interesting on the last Energy and Water Appropriations Bill. There was an amendment from a representative from California who she said people suffered from range anxieties in their electric cars, and she wanted to help them with that. I don't know what you do short of a 300-mile extension cord, but there are other technologies, and this whole concept of picking winners and losers, down in my neck of the woods, T. Boone Pickens talks a lot about using natural gas to power, especially the big rigs on the road. Why would we pick electric car technology when there are competing technologies that other people are investigating? Why
now that's just one question, but let's listen to Phil Gingrey from Georgia.
This time I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Dr. Gingrey, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ms. France, I know it seems like we've beat this horse to death, but I don't think quite so. So I want to go back to this issue of subordination, particularly in light of the fact that you have said repeatedly before this committee this morning that you believe that under this loan program you have the authority to subordinate in an extreme situation. You've said that a number of times, and I'll be happy to have you either refute that or confirm it. But here is the situation. In the private sector, if a loan were to be subordinated, and it's a scenario that you described that the borrower is about to default, to declare bankruptcy or whatever, and the person that made the original loan, that's in the first position, is going to likely lose all their money because of the bankruptcy that is likely to occur. And a deal could be structured. Maybe the original lender has no more money or is unwilling to put up any more money, throw good money after bad, as the expression goes, and somebody else, though, is willing to do that, maybe because they get a higher rate of interest to come in and pony up some more money. You might be able to restructure a deal like that, but I would think, now you've got a legal team behind you of young, bright-looking people, and you've been in business yourself a long time and maybe done some of these deals, you would have to go to that lender that's in the first position and get their approval before you could restructure and subordinate them to a secondary position. Would you not?
You do. You're in consultation with them, as we were.
You were not in consultation with me.
Oh,
I'm a
me.
taxpayer. You were not in consultation with we, the taxpayer. That is the problem here, and that's just the thing that just amazes me that you don't seem to get. Now, there was a memo that our committee obtained that Jacob Lew, the former director of OMB, sent not only to the Department of Energy, but as I understand, to every other agency and department of the federal government, very specifically saying, it was Circular A-129 to be exact, this guidance document that was sent by then Director of OMB, Jacob Lew, to heads of executive departments. You cannot do this. Under these loan programs, whether they're Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture, or wherever throughout the federal government, this cannot be done. And you guys were told repeatedly, consult with the Treasury. After all, it was in the Department of Treasury where the money was being lent. And you repeatedly refused to go to the source of the funding to ask the question if this was okay. You just, as my colleagues have pointed out, asked some rookie junior counsel in the Department of Energy to give you a quick and dirty opinion so you could go ahead and get this done and get it out the door. And that's where you, and I say you, and I use that term, Mr. France, generically. I think you've been a good witness. I think you've been honest with us. But I think you are honestly wrong in thinking that you could continue in this loan program. And I'm like some of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I'm not ready to say that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater and just eliminate the loan programs entirely. I want to think very long and hard on that before I would vote to do that. But if you're telling me that if we continue the loan program and you're the guy there, you're the straw that stirs the drink in regard to this loan program, and another extreme situation comes up, in your judgment, you would subordinate the taxpayer. If that's the case, then I would say, let's get rid of the damn thing. I don't think you have the authority to do that. And if I want you to respond to me, and if you're unclear about it, you get together with your team and y'all better look at the documents and study this long and hard, because I think you're flat wrong on this.
Well, my only response, and at the expense of just the reiteration of my comment, we would hope to never have to subordinate. It is a tool of the last
better not
resort.
ever do it again.
I have more experience in the private sector, quite frankly.
Let me interrupt you just for let me interrupt you for just a second, because you're going down the same path. It is not a tool of last resort in your quiver, in your toolbox. You don't have that tool. Don't you understand that?
He don't.
The advice, and I again do not have a license to practice law, so I have to depend on the civil service advice of our general counsels who reached a different conclusion, sir.
Well, I suggest that you go back with your counsel, and I suggest that you talk with the attorneys and the bankers in the Department of Treasury, and maybe even a little sidebar with Jacob Lew himself, and look very carefully at Circular A-129, because Mr. Chairman, I apologize to my colleagues for, as I say, going back to this issue over and over again, but the gentleman just doesn't seem to get it.
He don't, does he?
And that's the reason why I think we just
Put
need
his
to make
ass
sure
in jail, Phil.
that he does get it. And with that, I'll yield back.
Yeah, you better.
Thank you. At this time, recognize the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Pompeo, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. France, for being here today. I've heard two different, we've got this bill. I think it's a good bill, trying to make sure that we don't.
We don't want to hear him now. This next guy, he is really putting him on the spot. Gonna spank him real good.
When it comes to solar projects, how many loan applications do you have in this program? Or not applications, excuse me. How many active participants, remind me, are in the program right now?
Well, I think I have the schedule right in front of me. There,
16.1 billion with a B dollars.
12 projects. In solar manufacturing, we have 4 projects, but only 2 of those 4 have been dispersed or we have gone forward with. 2 are on hold for the reasons that have been identified here in this hearing today. So those are the major.
16,
so it's essentially
dumbass.
12 plus 4 for 16.
Okay, so you've got 16. Does that include Solyndra or Abound?
It does, sir.
It does, so that number doesn't
Sir.
include that.
God,
Yes, sir.
What, you set a number of benchmarks and milestones.
Yes, sir.
And so are those just major milestones, or are you actually monitoring compliance with the terms of the contract itself?
We're doing both, as a matter of fact.
So you're making sure they're complying with every term
Yes,
of the
sir.
contract?
Yes, sir, we are.
Just
On a
like you
weekly
did
to monthly
Solyndra, huh?
basis on every project. Now, there's a reasonableness, and that is that if you're going, what we've done now going forward, we're putting phased disbursements against absolute hard milestones. We will see dispersing if in fact
You
there are
would know
no.
a milestone, but hit you in the ass.
shopped. I mean, that's forum shopping in the Department of Energy. But even within the Obama administration, we've got emails from the Department of Treasury telling Department of Energy that we don't think it's legal for you to do this. You ought to go talk to the Justice Department. Did you see those emails?
No, I did not, sir.
Now, I don't understand how you can sit here and tell us you're serious about reforming this loan program. You told Mr. Barton, you said, we're looking at ways to reform this. We don't want to make the mistakes of the past. You don't even know what happened. We had committee hearings. I mean, this stuff that was broadcast on C-SPAN. You
Smack
can
him.
go find all this. We had to subpoena some of these documents. And you're telling us today you didn't even go look at this? And yet you're serious about reforming a program when you didn't even go and review the record that's been out there for months and months
I
of what
knew
we've
it.
uncovered in this investigation. There's stuff that's out there in the public domain you can read in the newspaper about the problems leading up to this subordination. And yet you're telling us you don't even know what happened. You don't even know this history, but you're serious about reforming the program. You don't even know how it got to this point.
I'm familiar with what we did and how we did it. I'm not familiar with the background information. And
But the background is part of what got us to this point, what got the taxpayers to having lost $535 million of money. It wasn't just us here in Congress on this committee saying it shouldn't have been done. You had people within other agencies in the Obama administration saying you shouldn't do it. And it's their emails saying this. And you're telling me you haven't even read those emails?
No, I have not.
Well, you better go back and read them. I mean, it's part of your job, if you're going to reform the loan program, to know how we lost $535 million of taxpayer
We don't
money.
give a
Because there
damn.
are
That's
other
the
loans
reason
out
we
there.
hadn't
You're
read 'em.
admitting how many more billions of dollars in taxpayer money are out there at risk in these loans?
16.1 billion.
As I've indicated to you and to the full committee, this is a high-risk business.
That's a question. How much money? How many billions of dollars are at risk in these loans?
I don't have that. I'm not
How can you not have that?
perfectly
You're in charge of the
clairvoyant.
program.
It's not particularly clairvoyant enough to know what the future holds. We're working.
No, how much
pretty hard.
money how much taxpayer money is invested right now in these loans?
Well,
I would think you'd be able to give me an answer. You run the program.
yeah, I can tell you, under the 1705 program, 16.1 billion.
My
So there's
God.
$16.1 billion of taxpayer money at risk. This isn't venture capital money. Private sector people thinking this is a good bet. Obviously, they turned their back on it. Private sector said, we probably don't think these investments are good enough, so we're not going to invest in them. So these companies went to the taxpayer. They went to your agency, and they got taxpayer money. And so you're now the steward of that taxpayer money. I would hope you would go back and look at the history of how we've lost hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money because there's still billions out there. I mean, do you understand why it's important that you know this history?
Sure, certainly I do.
Well, then, I just find it perplexing that you're going to sit here and tell me you haven't looked at it yet. Because we've had hearings on this stuff. We've got members on both Republican and Democratic side that have read this. I mean, some people fought us
my
subpoenaing the
God.
information, but we passed it anyway. We got the subpoenas, we got the documents, we know what the emails say. And many of those emails said, don't do it. And yet you're sitting here still saying you're going to do it. You'd subordinate the taxpayer,
No,
even though they're emails from Department of Treasury.
With all due
Saying don't do
respect,
it.
Congressman, this is a tool of the last resort. We hope to never have to use it.
But you said you're still willing to use it, didn't you?
Until the attorneys advise me that it's a tool that we can't.
Which
we can't-
attorneys? Some attorneys were going to advise you not to do it, and so you went and found other attorneys. I mean, please go look at the history. It's your
Look
job
at
to
the
look
law.
at this history because there's billions of taxpayer money still at risk, not to mention what was already lost with Solyndra, Beacon, and maybe others.
Poor Matt, 20 million to Van Jones, don't
We
forget him.
apparently have a
Slush fund
document
for
open this hearing,
Obama.
and I would just request that Mr. Skillies place the documents he's referring to, the outside counsel opinions, saying that the subordination was illegal into the record, so we could know what he's talking about.
We've got
It
many
is.
documents in the record, thousands.
That would be helpful, thank you.
We'd be happy to continue to go down this road and
All
try to
of these
find out more
documents have been in the record of prior hearings of oversight investigation. We'd be happy to put them in the record of this hearing. This time, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Bill Bray, for 5 minutes.